किया वर्षों जकड़ी बेड़ियों को अब तो तोड़ो, क्रांति की मशाल जला गांधी बोले अंग्रेजों भारत छोड़ो। बहुत सहा गुलामी को अब ना सहेंगे, आजादी की बात रही वो लेके रहेंगे। अगस्त की बेला में हम सौगंध उठाते हैं, सशक्त राष्ट्र के सपने को चलो मिलकर आज सजाते हैं। हर युवा को रोजगार मिले, हर नारी की आजादी हो, हर घर स्वास्थ्य सबल बने, ये गली गली मुनादी हो। हो जन जन स्वाभिमानी हो, देश में ना रहे गरीबी, विकास ही अपनी निशानी हो। एक क्रांति फिर ऐसी हो, रगों में वही रवानी हो, कंधे से कंधा मिलाकर सबने बस यही ठानी हो। अगस्त की बेला में हम सौगंध उठाते हैं, सशक्त राष्ट्र के सपने को चलो मिलकर आज सजाते हैं। हर युवा को रोजगार मिले, हर नारी की आजादी हो, हर घर स्वास्थ्य सबल बने, ये गली गली मुनादी हो।
Over to you, Neeraj.
Thank you, Gauri. A very warm welcome to everyone. Good evening, good morning, whichever time zone you are in. I'm sure you have enjoyed this year's very interesting sessions at India Rural Colloquy. Today, we have a terrific and insightful session again on an issue that we no longer can afford to ignore, bulging youth population and its critical role in societal transformation. Over the years, global community has long identified and recognized that imagination, ideals, and energy of young people are vital for the continuing development of societies. However, most young people, particularly those in developing countries like India, are facing enormous social and economic challenges. Therefore, steps must be taken to remove these obstacles and help young people so that they have the opportunity to contribute to the development of society. Today's session will focus on galvanizing and channelizing the energy, aspirations, efforts of our young to build a society of their dreams, one that assures a future to express themselves fully. Panelists will share their deep insights on concrete pathways for young to participate in social and economic change. On an issue of such importance, I'm very grateful to have a very eminent panel to lay for all of us the path ahead. Among them, we have participants who bring unique experience from large global programs around young people like Global Opportunity Youth Network, Work for Progress, Future Makers, Yuva Compass, etc. So we are going to have a great session today. I'd like to go ahead and introduce the panel we have today. We have Ms. Karuna Bhatia. Karuna is leading the sustainability agenda at the Standard Chartered Bank, India, and Global Business Services. Under Karuna's leadership, SCB has rapidly progressed in its journey towards being an inclusive organization by working towards affecting a real change through initiatives like Future Makers. Future Makers is a global initiative to tackle inequality by supporting disadvantaged young people to learn new skills, improve their chances of getting a job, and starting their own enterprises. We have Ms. Kanika Verma, who leads the Inclusive Green Entrepreneurship vertical of the Development Alternatives Group. Kanika is passionate about social innovation and system change and brings a unique experience of creating and driving social innovation platform for job creation among rural women and youth. She has been instrumental in developing ecosystem of enabling services for rural youth in Uttar Pradesh as part of the Work for Progress program of Lakashya Foundation. Vinay leads the climate and livelihoods portfolio at Samhita. Unfortunately, Priya couldn't make it to the panel today because of a family exigency. So we have Vinay in place of Priya. Vinay leads the climate and livelihoods portfolio at Samhita. He brings the unique experience of working on adaptation strategy and livelihoods. Prior to Samhita, he worked with various organizations where he led new product development and was instrumental in driving product expansion into various programs and government partnerships, including Niti Aayog and National Skills Development Corporation. Last but not the least, we have Ms. Aliva, who leads TRIS youth engagement, particularly focused on the 4 E's: employability, entitlements, education, and entrepreneurship. She has a rich and unique experience of both working within the government in implementation and policy making and directly with youth communities in one of the most backward areas of the country. She has pioneered the Yuva Compass solution at TRIF to catalyze economic opportunities for rural youth in remote locations. And on a personal note, I'm fortunate that she's also my life partner and my inspiration. The host for this terrific panel is our very special Alice. She has worked with big corporates globally, large investors, and international donors to bring social impact into their portfolio and help philanthropies and social enterprises create system-level changes. She has been instrumental in designing the critical Global Opportunity Youth Network program to provide access to dignified, productive, and sustainable entrepreneurship and employment pathways to young people across the globe. So with this, I'll request Alice to take over the session. Thank you again very much for joining this session. Alice, over to you.
Thanks so much, Neeraj, and thank you to TRI for hosting this important workshop over and over again. This is a wonderful space for all of us to connect, to collaborate, and really plan in a concrete way what we can do to work together for the greater future of India. And so with this topic about young people, the future is definitely young. The average and median ages across the world, including India, is getting younger and younger. Am I still audible?
Yes, Alice, we can hear you.
Hello? Okay, wonderful. And apologies if sometimes my video cuts out as long as I'm still audible.
Alice, we cannot hear you. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Many of us know that what the issues are and what are the challenges that are arising with the youth bulge that's apparent all over the world. And one of the things I'd love to do when I'm talking about this issue is really focus on the asset-based side of young people. We often focus on the challenges, but what we really sometimes miss out on is the youth potential, the aspirations, the incredible things that they can create and innovate and drive towards sustainable economic development across all of our societies. And so what we'd really love to do in this panel today is identify the concrete ways in which we can engage them in program design, implementation. How do we improve all of the wonderful programs that my fellow panelists are doing? As well as how do we really reach the young people deep in the grassroots level, the ones that are most marginalized, the ones that are often excluded. And finally, we really want to think about what is it that youth need? A lot of times we speak about youth jobs, we think about employability, but a young person is holistic, they're unique, they're different. What are the different ways that we can really engage with young people in the variety of ways that they come with their different lived experiences, their different opportunities and mindsets? How do we work with them on their youth journeys to really achieve the kind of aspirations and growth that they're possible, that they're all capable of? And so with that, what I'd love to do is take a few minutes and have each of the panelists speak to the specific ways that their organizations are engaging young people. What are the interventions
So we'll just wait while Alice is connecting in.
Okay. Apologies, am I back online?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Sorry for that. So yes, so with that, would love to ask each of the panelists to share a little bit more concretely the kinds of programs that they're running related to the topic of engaging youth in the way that they're designing those programs, the way that young people are engaged in implementing. So often we talk about young people kind of in the context of we're going to run a couple of workshops, and so now we've included youth opinion. And so if you can each share both the kinds of details about your programming as well as the concrete ways that you're engaging youth in those programs. So maybe we can start with Aliva and then move into talking with Kanika about the work that you're doing, Karuna, and then Vinay, if we can hear from all into some of the comments throughout. Aliva, over to you.
Yes, hi, Alice, and thank you. Yeah, so if to begin with, so at Transforming Rural India Foundation, we have started a program, designed a program for the youth by creating local rural youth hubs at women collectives. So the idea here is that these rural youth hubs provide safe space for the rural youth to come together and access different opportunities that are available around employment, entrepreneurship, self-employment, and skilling. Or if you want to put it in a crux, different career advancement opportunities. That's how the hubs function. It is a phygital in nature. It's both a physical hub, which has a digital, spine with it, where the youth through the help of technology, realizes the aspiration through a small, psychometric tool. They understand their own aspiration, and with the help of the counselors in these hubs, they're able to realize, the different opportunities that are available to them, and what best suits to that, the aspirations, and how they can probably, grab that opportunity. So these youth hubs, if I have to summarize it, they just fulfill one thing: youth take informed career choices through services of specialized package services around counseling, mentoring, and aggregating different available opportunities for them locally. So this is what basically we are trying to do, and in the conversation I will speak more about our learnings and insights that we have drawn while engaging in this model with the rural youths.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's a very concrete way, and we've heard time and time again from young people how important safe spaces are for them to engage. Kanako, over to you. If you can share a little bit more about the programs that you're running. I think you're on mute. Kanaka, can you hear us? Okay, maybe we can come back to you. And Karuna, over to you. Maybe you can share a little bit more about your programs.
Yes, thank you, Alice. I represent Standard Chartered Bank, and for us, sustainability is a way of doing business. A lot of themes that we support. One of the main themes is future makers that Neeraj touched upon earlier, where we do look to provide advancement opportunities to the youth across a variety of subjects. So we've looked at rural employment, where we have partnered with TRIF to help rural youth get opportunities that they can use in the areas that they live in, which means that there isn't too much of migration needed, there isn't too much of stress in terms of moving out of the city and setting up a new abode, but being comfortable in the position that they are in the city they are in. And how can they be provided opportunities? Those are more entrepreneurial in nature. So providing them information, like Aliva said, and the finances and the knowledge to set up small enterprises. That's one part of the work that we do, which is very new, but we're very excited about it. We also help youth get skilled on the BFSI opportunities, which is business and banking finance industry. Since we are a bank, we would like to encourage youth to opt out for opportunities that can give them a futuristic kind of standing in either the microfinance industry or NBFCs and so on. The third work that we do is in the healthcare industry. So eradicating blindness is one of our single biggest themes that we support. We've been doing this since 2003 in India. And we've got, in the absolute communities, we've got structures like the vision centers, called the vision centers, which are small brick and mortar, where we help the communities get eye screened, and they are recommended either an operation to help them regain their eyesight or get their eyesight corrected, and any other kind of an intervention that would help them regain their eyesight. We've today got about 300 of them. Now, these vision centers are manned by vision technicians, and we have found this as a very important kind of area where we can help underprivileged women get trained over a 2-year course to become vision technicians. So we've set out academies with the likes of LV Prasad, Dr. Shroffs, Arvind, where we are supporting marginalized women get this 2-year diploma and become vision technicians in either the vision centers that we support or outside. We found this a very good intervention, and we found stickiness of the women, because the jobs have been liked by them. And we are seeing that there has been a lot of loyalty and stickiness in continuing, which we have felt is important, because today, as you see, the youth, keeping them on in jobs for more than 6 months is really a big challenge. So this is how we've divided it, and we are continuing to find opportunities for youth that they want, rather than a force fit kind of a job. It's very difficult because multiple people are into skilling, so it's got to you've got to be able to find a niche for yourself. And right now we feel the work that we're doing with TRIF and the work that we're doing on healthcare is giving us that edge of doing building capability in a few sectors. So that's how that's my introduction to the work that we are doing in Future Makers in Standard Chartered Bank. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I really want to pick up on one point that's interesting maybe for our attendees to understand, as well as how you're looking at a couple of things at the same time, meaning your health program also becomes a livelihood program.
Yes,
you're looking
right.
at livelihoods, but in the rural space, that's very targeted to the way that they're, what they need, the small livelihoods and things that are focused on that. So it's interesting as we think about some of these programs, even integration between programs, that you're not just doing the health and you're not just doing some of the entrepreneurship work, but really combining them in that way. So it'd be interesting from our attendees, if you have questions on that or experiences, to go to the Q&A and continue to share as our panelists are explaining some of their work. I hope we have, thank you for that, Karina. And Kanik, are you back online? If you can
I'm so sorry,
okay.
But I'm online, yeah.
No worries, we're all gonna experience some of this at some point, so thank you. If you can also tell us a little bit more about your work, the programs that you do, and how that connects to the issue of youth, whether it's employability, policy change, agency building. Would love to learn a little bit more.
Sure. Thanks, Alice, and thanks so much, TRF, who we're lucky to call a partner in having us be part of the session. So the work that we do at Development Alternatives and in the program Work for Progress is where we're trying to build the phenomena of inclusive entrepreneurship. So you can have more people under the purviews of entrepreneurship, more people having access to opportunities, having economic tools, where a specific focus is on youth, on young people to be able to do that. And one of the first aspects, even before we design a program or sort of build a framework for designing a program, is to listen to those youth voices. And you specifically talked about their strengths and their aspirations. In fact, we seldom focus on the challenges or the weaknesses, but focus more on the opportunities and the strengths that young people have right now. And they're brimming with ideas, they're brimming with aspirations that we have to capture. So for us, deep listening is about listening to the various voices, listening and sifting through the various truths that each one of them would have, but collectively, how young people think that they can transform or they can create change is a big aspect of our work, including understanding how a young woman sort of sitting in Uttar Pradesh, Mirzapur, would be thinking would be very different than, say, someone who's sitting in New Delhi. And that's also my segue into the second aspect that's important to us, which is contextualizing the solutions. Who are we actually really listening to? Who are we creating the solution with? Unfortunately, the youth is also very much living in a very polarized world right now. They're trying to sift through various challenges such as identity, belongingness, whose aspiration is more important, how does one become, get success really fast. It's important that we're able to contextualize the solution
to a particular persona that we're talking about of youth. So for example, the India that we're living in can actually be divided in two Indias, one which is exclusive, where the median age of the unicorn entrepreneurs in India is 30, they're young, and we have about 88, one of the maximum number of unicorns possible in the world. On the other hand, you will have 36 million jobs who have lost, youth that have lost jobs in the last year. So, that's the excluded. So it's very, very important that in the discourse, in the solution, we're able to sort of understand the persona of the entrepreneur and able to contextualize the solution. The third aspect for us is, of course, creating a systemic solution, which is able to help young people be part of this changing dynamic world that is out there. So whether it's setting up an information kiosk for the young person in Bundelkhand, one of the most backward areas in India, which is run by, say, for example, a 90-year-old woman who doesn't have access to information, doesn't have access to smartphone, but is actually the forefront of the solution herself and is able to become sort of a role model or a mentor for other entrepreneurs, or actually unlock the way for other young people, to sort of creating a business competition where people are not only able to internalize the solution, but internalize entrepreneurship, but also be able to come up with new ideas and capture that.
I think we're Kanika froze for just a moment, so we can come back to her. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, please continue. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I thought I was talking. Where did I stop last?
I think you were just finishing up on the third component.
Okay, so basically, we're able to, create systemic solutions that enable young people to sort of get over the inhibitions or the challenges that inhibit them from creating a pathway for entrepreneurship or for any challenge that they have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I want to come back to a lot of these themes as we think about program design. Would love to pass it over to Vinay. If you can tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing and how you're working with youth or focused on youth in your programming. Would love to learn more.
Yes. Thanks, Alice. I think it's an immense honor to be part of an esteemed panel like this. So thank you for inviting us. And really, I think just wanted to start off by saying that Samhita is an impact catalyst in the sense that we reflect a core youth aspiration of having enabling impact to happen through partnerships with other organizations, right? Whether it's the entire philanthropic network, the CSR network, or with implementing organizations like NGOs and social enterprises. So when we look at youth, I think the fundamental point is that post the pandemic, which we've seen in the last 2 years, the question that we keep asking ourselves at Samhita is, how do we really build a solution with the best people we can to cater to young people who are struggling to find a decent job, struggling to stay on in that job, and finding life very difficult as what we're heading towards is a K-shaped economic recovery, with some people sort of recovering much faster than the others. So in this context, our core focus is an alliance of corporate partners and NGOs and philanthropic donors like USAID and STF, which is called the Revive Alliance. Revive is primarily focused on 3 principles which work very well with the youth. One is that rather than looking at philanthropy as a charitable intervention, how do we go beyond one-off grants towards more innovative blended finance instruments So we experimented with returnable grants, pay for performance instruments, etc. All of these resonate very well with the youth because it has a sense of dignity and aspiration aligned to it. So you meet a certain target, you get a certain incentive. You can necessarily return the grant that you've got, right? So that's a certain element of standing on your own feet, which the youth are very, very passionate about today. And the second point is that we realized that a lot of the aspirations have changed. So people are the young crowd that we're looking at today are not always very keen on migrating to a big city, struggling their way out. So, like other panelists here mentioned, how do we really look at what are the non-urban opportunities that we may be able to create in a sustainable manner, right? And how do we go beyond just scaling and training and to actually support the employability skills, the communication skills, the mentoring and coping mechanisms they need to survive in their new jobs. So I think that's the second part. And the third area where we really focus on the youth is the direction we want to go into. A lot of conversations today revolve around what is the employment gap. But if you look at aspirations, the young people of India today have aspirations which are very different from the traditional occupations that are out there. So one core area which I also understand is something we'll discuss later is the entire climate and renewable energy space, where there's a huge employment opportunity. There are aspirations as well, as both from the consumers who are becoming more conscious, and at the same time driving the demand for environment-friendly products and solutions, which will in turn create employment opportunities for youngsters who can be very proud that they're working in a sector which is both environmentally friendly, at the same time a decent livelihood. So that's the direction which we are working with partners to go ahead. So that in some, is where Samita sees the best way we can support the youth of India.
That's wonderful, and really amazing work on the financing side, especially as a ex-banker. Wonderful to see the way that Revive is moving forward. Very much needed in the space to finance the scale of the challenge, if you will. I want to come back to you on one point, and a very similar question that I'm going to ask Karuna from you as well, which is, I hear the points around how the programs are, for youth. And it seems like you've done a little bit of research of this is what they want in terms of changing nature of work, or let's say returnable grants are resonating. But I'd love to get a little bit more concrete, Vinay, in terms of how are you actually involving young people? Are they part of sessions that you're running? Is it, a handful of workshops? Are they on your executive committee in some way? Are they on a steering committee to help actually have that co-design process? And once things are running, how will you incorporate their feedback? And what I'm really interested in understanding is the concrete channels that you're setting
Right.
up for that type of youth engagement. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. So I think both internally as well as externally, there are multiple channels in which we're making sure that we're not just forcing what we think the youth want, but actually listening to them. In the external channel, I would say the fundamental conversation when we have for any livelihood support program is what is it that you really want? So when we talk about financial support, we have an array of options, from traditional one-time grants to returnable grants to access to bank finance through a couple of our bank partners. So it's really sitting down with them and understanding the business that they're working in, if they're an entrepreneur, or if they're looking for a skill loan and getting themselves skilled. It's really understanding what their aspirations are and what kind of solution works best for them, and then mapping them onto it. The second thing is that even the choice of trade, that we have somebody get skilled with our implementing partners, that's dependent on a very clear mechanism for feedback. For example, right at the beginning, we have conversations to say there are multiple trades that are available. Which one is it that you really want to be trained on? And can we help you choose that? So very often it's not just that, it's also incorrect to sort of assume that they know exactly what they want, right? Sometimes they want help to sort of figure that out. So we have built-in mentoring sessions and counseling sessions right at the beginning, before somebody gets on roll to a skill training program. And that sort of helps uncovers what the aspiration really is, and then you can help them scale accordingly. I think internally within the organization, so we're a fairly young organization with significant youth presence across the levels, right? I think it's important to also realize that we really have a lot of trust within each other to come in if somebody else is not able to make it for a webinar like this, for example. I would say I'm just a shade over 30, so that is I fall squarely in that category, and I think this is a very meta example, but this is just a reflection of how Samhita treats young people, both internally as well as externally. Yeah.
Great, thank you for that. And don't worry, panelists, I'm not asking everybody to share their ages because I'm not going to be doing that. So continuing on with the subject of incorporating youth voice in the design, Karuna, I love how you were talking about not force fitting anything into the youth space. And so Karuna, I'd love to understand how your team is thinking about these issues. And especially we have one of the questions from our attendees thinking through also in the concept of inclusion. And so if you can walk us through a little bit about how your teams are looking at the design and then again, the kind of implementation and then the feedback loops to continue to improve your programs. How are you incorporating youth voice in that? Thank you.
Alice, actually, we don't look at creating, let's say, opportunities ourselves. We are tying up with partners. So in our minds, we are quite clear that skilling and giving the disadvantaged youth opportunities is something that we'd like to do. Now, it is then dependent on us to, I guess it was geography-wise, what is really the need? So if you look at India, India is a country which only has a need to help, the young underprivileged because of, the mismatch of, income to poverty. So should we get into doing something that everybody is doing? So, we are saying that the jobs, how many jobs are there in the market? How many people will be able to get those jobs? What are those key jobs for people who, not have these skills of, let's say, a particular specialization? So if I say, we want to look for sales executives for banks, do we have people who are skilled for that? The answer is no. So through a partner, an implementing partner, we would do a skilled course which would help those people gain those skills. Now, there would be a menu option that would be provided to the youth that, these are some of the areas where, we are going to help skill. Is that enough? No. Is that what they would want? I don't know. Now, this is a big gap. I am providing an opportunity today to people, which I feel is the requirement after having done a reasonable amount of research. But today we are seeing after the pandemic, the youth themselves are so confused. They've moved back so many years, in level of confidence in, what they had maybe 3 years ago to what they are today. And, we are back to that huge gap. But what we have seen is that in the healthcare industry, there is a huge need. So we all know what the statistics are of, a doctor to a patient. And that need has been wonderfully fulfilled by people from the underprivileged section who've been able to take this 2-year course of either being a paramedics officer or a vision technician or even an optometrist for that matter. Most of the optometrists that are coming out of the system today are women. And we found that that's a good opportunity. And our third intervention that I was talking about is with TRIF, where GOIN and TRIF together are helping the youth understand the importance of an entrepreneurship. They're being able to guide the person with finances. They're being able, and I'm very happy to read the first-hand results, where we have seen so many youth actually invest an amount, to start a business, which means that there is that kind of a stickiness that I'm willing to put in 1 lakh or 30,000 rupees or 40,000 rupees to help sustain a business take forward. Now, this all means that there is genuine need and there is a genuine requirement for skills to be gained to run a business. So, I think there are all different kind of areas for youth to gain that. But is that what they want today? We don't know. We've got to keep discovering now, and we've got to keep opening up opportunities for them, which they want. So today I say that this is my entire let's say info hub where I can place people. But we are continuing our journey to find out what more can it be. Unfortunately, we are not coming out with too many options. We're not getting too many options, and that's the truth of the matter.
Yeah, especially in the rural places where there's
even if you take the urban, take urban, Alice, the roles. Of course, digitization has come out as the biggest, outcome in the pandemic. So, that is an area which clearly requires help. Cybersecurity has globally come out as, one of the most important, let's say, areas which are demanding, where jobs are being demanded. So, we know that these are, let's say, a couple of themes where we can help train. But what more? What more do the youth want? Which is why in the urban kind of a setup, we are facing the challenge of stickiness. When I say we, the entire environment, if you see, not more than 3-4 months, people are sticking on. So, if you're going to keep changing from one call center to the other, then you're not really gaining a skill or getting an experience, which is going to really help you, let's say, get forward. This is our view.
Absolutely. And it's a very interesting thing because I feel a lot of the conversations we've had, and I'm going to point some of these questions to Aliva and Kanika if I can, which is a little bit of this disconnect where it feels like we're saying, here are all these opportunities, there's financing available, there's training available, there's job gaps, in fact, in the market, and yet youth are not retained very often. They quit regularly, and we can talk about whether it's a dignified environment or not. That's one driver of it. But there's many factors on the youth side. And from at least the TRI-GOIN partnership, we've talked a lot about creating hubs where they know their options. We've talked about on kind of the mindset on the entrepreneurial side. We've talked about really working with them through mentorship. But I'd really love to understand, there does still seem to be, and Aliva, maybe turning to you first, this disconnect of everyone trying to create these great programs where they say are youth demand driven, but a lot of times they're the labor market side driven. And so a lot of what happens is there's training, they get placed, or they don't even show up for an interview, or they leave. And so would love to think about how you're addressing some of these issues in your work.
Yes. So absolutely, Alice, one of our, key learnings that we have been having is that, both the things are dynamic, be it the youth's aspiration or be it the labor markets, both the things are, dynamically moving and at a very fast pace. It is moving, and we are unable to grapple with the, the changes and the shifts which are happening in terms of the aspiration and the labor market's demand. However, one quick thing is that we have realized, after working for some time with the youth is, there has to be a space for them to engage in a career dialogue. I mean, even in the rural youth, the first thing, no matter wherever you go, you speak to them what they want to do in their life. The first choice is a government job. And it is not like they do not know the dearth of it, or how limited that option is to them, but they would still choose that. So how do you make, other options more simulating for them? How do you make it more real for them? I understand there is a concept of, decent work, whatever the ILO has stated, irrespective of that, can we in some ways simulate the kind of jobs that are available so that they know what a day in the life looks like. Second is, the bigger realization is that youth themselves do not, at least in the rural India, it is fair to say that cannot exhibit their agency on their own. So that they do have, there is a micro system and a meso system with them. So basically the microsystem, we can talk about their household, their family, their parents, the guardians, and at the meso layer, they are influenced by the community they come from, the peers that they have, the schooling, the college, the skilling institutions where they have gone to, how all these, these two layers fairly shape them up and fairly guide them to take those decisions, career decisions particularly. So it is very important that for us not only to engage with the youth, but also engage at all these, layers with whom they interact, so that, they also sort of, help them in taking that decision. So that is a huge realization that, working just with the youth, counseling them won't help them to, pick a career. I mean, it is important, definitely a lot of investment and energy has to go into it, but we cannot just forget about, their family, the guardians, the peers, the community that they come to. So that is one of the learnings. Secondly, we have to, imagine, even for an urban youth, I see myself more advantaged than my parents, or even my older cousins, because I have now LinkedIn with me. I have access to a lot of information to how the job market is shaping, what are the current sectoral demands are being projected. I have access to all of these, which probably my older cousins or even my parents didn't had at one point of time. And look at how empowered I feel with that information. I may not be using it or consuming it fully, but nevertheless, having all those information shapes my perspective towards life, my perspective towards the changing situation. Then for the rural youth, they are disadvantaged in that way, in a sense, because there is no customized LinkedIn for them. Obviously, LinkedIn is open for everyone to access, but we also have to understand the limitations of these rural youths to access information. So can a more effective, labor market information system or something, a platform like a LinkedIn come in for them, which can help them not just on around opportunities, but also provide them a platform for, peer networking, understanding the scenarios, just creating an alumni network of these rural youth. So all these things, critically, I think will play going forward, because see, COVID-19 did change a lot of things, but one good thing which has come out of it is that people in these last 2 years, particularly the rural youth, had a lot of access to digital content. And going forward, we can, actually bring in this digital platform into their lives to create more significant challenges, like to address all these challenges and create more significant impact in their lives. So this is, the early thoughts that I had. And again, like Karuna was saying, that of course, we think something that, is relevant for them. The labor market is planning something, the skilling institutions are providing a training program, but do the youth actually need it? But this is the question. The real question is, do they even know what are the options available? Do they even know that, going or choosing this option, where is it leading to? Because a lot of these skill training are at the entry level jobs. So what is my career trajectory beyond that? What do I do after going out of the training? What do I do after a year? Where do I go? That trajectory has to be shown to them for them to realize, because the only thing that the government job does is they know that there's a promotion, and I might, if not promoted in terms of my designation, but at least there'll be a promotion in my pay scale. So all those simulations, if we can bring into these blue collar jobs, largely because these are the sectors, these blue collar jobs are the sectors that the NEET category of students are accessing or the youth are accessing. If such informations can be made available to them, I think it is going to make a significant change where they are actually enabled to take a more informed career choices, and not just depending on government vacancies. And I don't know, one is to X amount of infinite number of students turning up for a single vacancy of government job.
Thank you so much. And I can see the power of that connection between the kind of interventions that Karuna is investing in and some of the work on the ground that you're able to implement in that way. And so even just a few takeaways for our attendees already, this kind of career dialogue and journey, this real planning of your career trajectory, a critical one, really understanding that local context that, a job is not just about jobs. The reason they're leaving or not showing up could be for other things. And so understanding their families, their local cultural situations, and then that lack of information, that if that can be shared in a way that they can digest is so critical. And picking up on that, turning over to you, Kanika, and also looking at some of the questions that are being posed in the chat, given that you work so deeply with young people in this asset-based frame, which of course we really are inspired by, can you tell us a little bit of your lessons from what you've heard? Do some of their aspirations differ by different socioeconomic backgrounds? Do they differ by geographies? And you touched on this just a little bit already. What about the issue from a gender lens perspective, or even people with disabilities? What are some of the insights you're hearing from the young people around these challenges of retention, of lack of information? Would love to learn a little bit more from all the deep work that you've done already.
Wow, there is so much to unpack in that question. And everyone can hear me, right? I just want to confirm. Okay, perfect. So yeah, I mean, I was listening to everyone, and there's such interesting experiences that are coming out, but I was listening to these nuances of, what you think, and I think, no, but that's very different from an area that's there. And I sort of, my mind was buzzing, but if you go to, say, Odisha, the hamlets of Odisha, the answer will be very different to, say, someone who is in the NCR region, a young woman in the heart of Haryana. So I think, and Aliva sort of touched upon it a little bit. For us, it's extremely important to understand that a young person identifies a lot with their cultural identity, and family and the community plays a very, very strong role. One of the things we realized while working in the regions in North India was that if 100 young people wanted to set up a business, only 7 are able to do so. So this is 100 people who want to set up a business and are not able to do so because of various reasons. One of them is cultural aspects. A lot of them think that government jobs are really the best solution, because that's, you're not supposed to take too much risk. It's okay to sometimes even take odd jobs as opposed to like having an entrepreneurial identity. On the other hand, you have, when someone wants to set up a business or wants to start a pathway for entrepreneurship or their career, the friend or the neighbor is actually the first point of contact for them. So it's extremely important that anything that we sort of create in terms of the solution, it keeps in mind, and it actually includes everyone. So when we talk about inclusion, it's not just the young people, but it includes how the family thinks, or how the community sort of operates. So inclusion in that sense is much more holistic. I think one of the things that we've also been trying to do is that we also think a lot about how do you create a solution, or how do you sort of create that solidarity among young people so that they're collectively, they use collective intelligence to be able to sift through the challenges. We in that sense are just sort of facilitators in that process. We have a very, very minute role in that sense, and we're sort of the forefront. And we also realize, I think someone mentioned it, that do young women, for example, a lot of questions on young women, rural women, do they really want to be part of an institution, a community institution? Is that what they identify with? Is that solution that's still relevant for them? Might be so, but what else is out there? So we created a digital platform where it was like a co-working space for young women, just to exchange ideas and also connect with, say, a photographer out there who might be looking for an apprentice to start helping him or her with their work. And we've seen that this platform, it's actually called Aspiration Pie, to be more precise, which we co-created with one of our partners at Work for Progress, Janastu. And we realized that this literally was a window to the world outside their village. And those are the connectors that we are able to do so. And we also were very, very conscious that a lot of young women don't have access to smartphones. So you cannot create a digital solution which expects you to just use smartphones, because most women or young women might not have access to it, and you end up excluding. Technology in that sense is a double-edged sword. So we created these kiosks, or we center them in community institutions so that they have access to that, and collectively they're able to see what they would like to do. I think the third thing I want to sort of bring into the conversation is also this aspect of, what do young people even really want to do? And I think this is where solutions need to dig much deeper. I mean, a lot of times skilling solutions, they say, okay, these are the 5 good entrepreneurship solutions, or these are the 5 skills that one must have. While not keeping in mind the aspirations or the journey that young women have gone through. If you sort of grow up in a rural village in Mirzapur, for example, and you're asked, okay, now you need to be a leader, now you need to be part of a job, now you need to set up a business, it's very difficult. The first thing she'll think about is safety. And I also realized that they have these deeper dreams that we need to go into. So we have in Mirzapur and Bundelkhand a lot of young women who are riding e-rickshaws. Now, these are areas where you don't even have e-rickshaws run by men, and you have women running. Why has it been possible to do so? Is that we realized it took one brave woman who said, when I was 13 years old, I loved motorbikes. And I always wanted to drive motorbikes, and mobility was her empowerment tool. So everyone has a different tool. Can we create tools that actually are able to get them to that journey? So we basically created a brave space where we asked women to sort of design what their dreams for livelihoods were, and sort of craft them. And she was the first one to start running an e-rickshaw, because mobility and connectivity.
Oh, I think she froze again, but fantastic points, and hopefully we'll get her back. And this is coming, maybe I'll come round again to her, but if Aliva, you can pick this up. Oh, sorry, Kanika, we lost you for a second.
I'm so sorry, and here we're talking about connectivity, just when I was talking about connectivity.
We have that problem too, yes, but very, very, very clear. And I think one of the things I'd love to do is to pick up on that and come back to you and Aliva as well, which is, I'm still hearing a disconnect, if I may be honest, which is that it's, what I'm hearing is that the problem's complex. Inclusion is not just around the individual, it's contextualized, it's the family, it's all of these different things. And yet the platforms being designed are, digital, but we don't have digital connectivity. People are not connecting with those opportunities. They try an opportunity and they're not retained. And so what's the secret sauce, right? What is it that we need to do? You're saying peer networks, work with the whole family. What else, right? Especially if these digital platforms aren't really working. And so many of the people in the chat right now are saying, yes, it's great, but it's still a problem. It's actually a really deep problem for all of our young people. And so we'd love to learn more of, what are these concrete programs? And maybe the answer is we need to be genuine in what we're doing now with our interventions. But what are some of these concrete programs? And maybe Kanika, if you have any immediate points, and then I want to also swing it back to Aliva, and then come back to Vinay and Karuna with additional points. Yes, please, Kanika, if there's any thoughts.
Sorry, Alice, I got disconnected for a second.
Oh, sorry.
I'm so sorry. Could you just repeat?
Oh, no problem.
Yeah.
No problem. And maybe Aliva, you can pick it up.
Yeah, and I can
yeah.
sort of respond after her. That'd be great.
Sounds perfect. Go ahead.
Yeah.
So Alice, really, I mean, even though your question made me think deeply, but I don't have an answer, and I'm sure, there is, as in Goen, you keep telling there is no single silver bullet which can probably solve this problem. There is actually not a single solution, but yeah, combination of different things can, probably solve these issues. So one very, early thoughts that I was thinking is, where is the nexus between, this skilling, employment, education, counseling services? So what is the nexus between all this? And is there a delta which, one can tap onto, looking at, the post-COVID era, what has happened, how, we saw a lot of rural youths, particularly, we saw the migrant exodus happening, and a large chunk of the people who came back were rural youths, but in the age bracket of 18 to 29. So that's the kind of segment that we work, and those were, the youth who came back, and those were the very people whom the cities failed, where they had gone with a lot of hopes and aspirations. So here, if one can look, there is a growing impetus to entrepreneurship, and, a lot of innovation has to come at the grassroots level. And maybe, if we look at the rural economy, there's a lot of subjects where, these entrepreneurship options can play around, right from, farm livelihoods, agriculture to, supply chain, healthcare, education, technology. So these are few segments, which have a lot of tremendous potential to boost, the hyperlocal economic activities, and where, probably the young can actually be at the forefront, reaping the benefits. And, it is not just, important to harness this opportunity just to sort of redesign the geographical distribution of work, but we can also maybe, this can also help create sustainable job ecosystems across the, villages and the smaller towns of India. So that was, if we can sort of shift to thinking, employment, trainings, everything at the cities, if we can focus back on more rural industries, work with young people to start their enterprise in sectors which can MSMEs to be set up in the rural areas. So they not only provide an opportunity for entrepreneurship, but also they will be creating a lot of jobs around for the local youth to be absorbed into them. So maybe that could be one way of thinking, but I'm sure again, the kind of demographic dividend we have, the kind of the population challenge we have, this is definitely not the only solution, but this could be one of the many solutions that one can try and test it. So of course there are going to be migration, of course, there will be people who will be opting out to go out of these villages to work in the cities, but few innovations, particularly looking at, at the rural areas, at the rural economy. These were, some of the ideas that I think could probably work if an enabling policies and government schemes are provided. These MSMEs can come up in the rural areas, providing not just entrepreneurship opportunities to the rural youth, but also enabling rural youths to get job opportunities from these MSMEs.
No, thank you so much for that, Aliva. And I think we're hearing a lot of answers from the beginning of what you're creating, from youth hubs that actually have connectivity and have hardware for young people to access, to share the information that you were talking about at the beginning. So youth hubs, the information sharing, and both you and Kanika talking about the career mindset, really having a much more holistic approach at the grassroots level with all of the partners that you're working with, especially from a gender lens perspective. Kanika, anything else to add before then I'd like to turn to Vinay and also ask a similar question from the scale perspective. How are you reaching those grassroots? So Vinay, we're going to come back to you in just a second. Kanika, any further thoughts before we hand over to Vinay?
Yeah, I think I think sort of Aliva touched upon innovation. And I think if we are creating digital solutions, if we want the solution to be transformative, then what process innovation, what changes are happening in the local community, in the current practices or how is the ecosystem enabling young people to pursue entrepreneurship? So one of the things that we do is that we've created a
Okay, we'll ask Kanika to also type in maybe the answer for this one. But it's a similar kind of question, Vinay, and it's coming out of a lot of the chats here, is that in your Revive, right? The program? Yes. It's so great. And Kanika, I'm gonna ask you to type it out in chat. The last points there. So Vinay, you know, I think it was 10 million or something. There's large numbers being thrown out of how many people you want to reach, not just, of course, with the program, which I actually, again, really respect. And so many of the interventions out there are giving these big numbers. And yet we get down to the grassroots level and there's disconnection in terms of all the things that have been mentioned in some of the Q&A here of challenges from a woman's perspective, or digital issues, or lack of information of even what kind of business to start, and that there's a perception and maybe a reality that a lot of the financing is not reaching the people that really need it, that there is this bifurcation of the people that already have access can continue to access more money and the things that are coming out, but that the majority, and especially in rural grassroots areas, are not getting access to that. So just from your perspective, how do you, and it doesn't even have to be your program as it's currently designed, but maybe ideally, how would you say even a phase 2 of your work to really reach at scale at the grassroots level, given all the issues that all of our attendees are sharing as well? Vinay, over to you. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah.
Yes? Oh,
yeah, I can hear you, Alex.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry. No, so I think the fundamental question is why do we have ambitious numbers? I think that's largely because of the kind of problem we're trying to solve. As a country in India, the scale is just too big, right? But just to come back to your point on I'll speak a little bit about what the largest system should really be focusing on, and what we are trying to do in our own small way. So the one big challenge today is a lot of even this very conversation that we're having right now is largely in English, and it's accessible to only a small segment of people, right? So the fundamental question is, a lot of the tools, resources that we have are designed for a non-vernacular audience, right? It doesn't mean that there is no content for vernacular audience. There are people running fantastic, everything from community radios to local newspapers are there. But what I'm trying to say is that there's a sense of creating two different Indias, one which sort of understands and speaks English, and the other which speaks a vernacular language, which at various points of time is looked down upon, not treated with a certain sense of dignity, right? So I think fixing, getting more of your social sector support to a vernacular audience is really where a lot of the scale will come. And also, I think, to be fair, all of us here are trying to solve, parts of the problem. The really big stakeholder is the government, right, which has a much bigger mandate, which has to address it. But just to come back to my point on how we're trying to do it in some form, we're recently rolling out an innovative, we're piloting this program to say, when you train people for jobs, rather than telling them, okay, this is the trade that you want, here is a very basic fundamental program which builds your communication skills. It helps you create your profile on LinkedIn. These are people who are from a vernacular audience. English is not their second or even third language. So how do you create a profile for them on LinkedIn? How do you map them onto platforms where vernacular conversations are equally respected and accepted, right? So if they're an entrepreneur, then they get to buy goods or access capital accordingly. Or if they're seeking a job, then they can seek a job through people who understand that they come from this particular background, right? So I think we need more of solutions which cater to that category. And I think the point on finance is really, a lot of the financial instruments that we have today in the market, especially most of the government schemes and government credit schemes have very recently, a large chunk of them have started moving more towards MSMEs. For the longest time, we had an MSMEs under various government schemes, credit guarantees, and all sorts of support to young entrepreneurs. But in the last few years, especially last 2 years of credit growth, if you see MSME segment has seen a significant uptake, and a lot of them are run by youngsters. But again, I come back to the point that 92% of the employment in MSME is in the micro category, which is the smallest category. So there's clearly something which is preventing young people from scaling up their businesses, right? Which is where the policy element and things like those come in. But I'll pause here and back to you, Alice, if you want me to add after that.
No, for sure. And always these sessions are fantastic in the sense that I feel like we need another full day workshop just to think about program design. And I really appreciate what you're saying, of course, local language, but also working with grassroots social organization, community-based organizations that are really able to reach at the levels and at the local contexts that would be very effective. So something that's really there around program design. So, from the entrepreneurship perspective, but also if we can broaden it, and coming back a little bit to some of the things that you've said, and Karuna and others, is the nature of work could also be changing, and how people engage with banks, how people borrow, how people finance what they're doing, the kinds of ways that they find information. Maybe they don't want to be retained, let's say, in a job, or have just one business. They want to have a lot of different businesses. Before we move over to Karuna, any thoughts, Vinay, from your side on, you say you talk to so many entrepreneurs on a regular basis. Do you see some of their thinking evolve? Do they want to get an employment opportunity first, an apprenticeship, then start a small business? It seems much more dynamic these days than in the past. So tell us more about what you're learning there.
Yes. So I think my limited experience, the biggest thing that I've learned is that a lot of people are not entrepreneurs by choice, but by because the system doesn't afford them good gainful employment. So when you become an entrepreneur not by choice, there is an initial struggle that you do go through. But we've seen in multiple conversations with entrepreneurs, whenever we did the returnable grants, which are very small ticket size of 10 to 20,000 rupees, more than 90% have paid that back, even though there was only a moral obligation. There was no legal obligation to repay. And not only do they pay the money back, they want loan for sizes. We want our business.
I think we've lost Vinay for a moment. We can come back to him as well. So maybe while that's paused, Karuna would like to get your thoughts on this topic. Kind of the different, changing nature of the future is young, and so young people are different. Also, post-COVID as well, things have changed so much. There's a lot more dynamic nature to how young people think about their own careers. How are some of the interventions that you're investing in? How would you say, in your thoughts? I know you work through partners, but how are you thinking about the changing nature of work in the programs that you're supporting as well? Would love to see how that's connecting with the way that youth are evolving.
My apologies. I think it's my turn to have.
I think
internet
if
issues.
Vinay's come back.
Vinay, and if you don't mind typing in the chat some of the things that you were sharing. Absolutely. Go ahead, Karuna.
Yeah, thanks. Alice, I think it's a very difficult question. And the pandemic is not yet over. We don't know, we really don't know what the answers are. So, I'm no expert here. And it's a big struggle. And, like I was saying earlier, everybody's into skilling. Most of the organizations are into skilling. But the jobs aren't available and the numbers aren't changing. So, every year we are pumping in money into investing in people who, if are not going to be, in jobs for a certain amount of time, then we've also got to be introspecting in, whether that is the right thing to do, or what is it, that needs to change. And, which is why I'm saying this again, that I think our intervention with TRIF is one test phase. It's a very important test phase because it's a holistic platform that is being given to the rural youth of Ramgarh and Barwani. Now, if that test pilot is successful, and if we see that, we have been able to achieve for X amount of or X number of youth what the program has set out to do, which is of course, get them the opportunities after mind skilling them. I think this job of mind skilling them, that why entrepreneurship is important and why is it not, it's not a difficult thing if you're given the skills. All of us were given skills, the right skills or the right training. So we became bankers. And entrepreneurship isn't an easy thing to do, but if you're being skilled correctly, which the TRIF program is setting out to do, I think the mindset which people go into that, how do you start a business? We say it's very easy, but it's really not easy. Even if it's a small business of 1 lakh of rupees, it's not easy. So we want to test pilot that, and then I'm saying that if as an outcome it is successful, may not be 100%. Nobody's 100% successful, but even if it's successful to a very large extent, it should become like a turnkey project that you pick up and take to another rural area and to another rural area, and so on, and keep building capability and capacity of the youth for that particular state or city or industry. And India is so widespread and so beautifully, you would see that every state has a very different, let's say, industry that they're pushing. So, you start training those people or to become small entrepreneurs in that particular industry. I'll give you an example. In COVID, what came out to happen is the oxygen plants that were setting up, all over the place. Now, did we have skilled people to set up those oxygen plants? The answer is no. So there was this beautiful opportunity that could we, by we, I mean, could we as a country look at, helping youth, disadvantaged youth, get some skills into being able to help set up oxygen plants? We don't know, we've got to keep thinking, we've got to keep thinking ahead. And a lot of opportunities are available. Now, this COVID piece that I'm talking about, I don't think people realize that this would be a gap. Everybody said, let's invest in setting up oxygen plants. But out came an opportunity that this is now going to be perhaps a regular kind of a medical intervention, if not an oxygen plant, something else. Is that an area where we could look to perhaps train a larger set of people? Do youth themselves know that this kind of an opportunity is available? I think the answer is no. Everybody would, go to the straight line method and say, hey, these are the jobs that are available. So how should that be done is important. The other thing that, I think is that we are not talking enough about rural employment. We are not. Everybody's just talking about urban, digitization and all of that. But the thing is, more than half of the youth are in the rural areas. What is it that we can do for them? Besides entrepreneurship, how can we look to help them? So let's say, Bombay, Pune, if if you're familiar with India, for years, people have been traveling between Bombay, Pune to work. Okay, catching a train early in the morning, traveling 3 hours, doing a job and going back. That can also happen in the rural areas where, you've got a capital city or you've got a state which is, can provide you more urban kind of opportunities. You can make that effort to do. But today that effort making is not, it's not there like it used to. So, people feel it's okay if I don't have a job, or, it's all right. But the question is that we've also got to, sorry. Sorry, I'm recovering from a very bad congestion. My apologies. I think there's, we've also got to build a campaign for the youth to help them understand that it's important to have, a job. It's important to learn skills. It's important to, be independent. I don't know. It's the thought is just coming to me. We don't do enough of that campaigning. We talk about opportunities, but we've got to go down and, help them understand it. And which I think the TRIF, project is doing that. It's giving them a all-encompassing support of knowledge, of, finance, how to start a business. And I'm, really eagerly, waiting to see the project transform the youth of that area. And, then we would like to take it forward into some of the other areas as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry
Thank
for
you.
that very long answer to
No.
your very short question. But, sorry. There is so much to do. There is so much for us to learn. There's so much for us to tell the youth to change rather than have a menu of options. When we went looking for jobs, we had menu of options. We knew there were only 4 things you could do. You could either become a lecturer, you could become a doctor, engineer, or a banker. You could do an MBA, and that was it. But today there's so many other opportunities. Digitization, and people can sit at home and do these kind of jobs. Are we telling them that they can do it? Can we skill them to work from home as well? I don't know the answer, but I would look to our panelists also to to help pump in. Maybe Aliva, she's since she's managing the TRF program. She must be wondering, like, all these thoughts that Karuna's talking about, how much can we do? We just have to do so much.
And it's refreshing, Karuna, to see your openness and interest in piloting, and also piloting, if I may, and maybe this is a takeaway, it's not a single point of intervention, and it's messy and it's holistic. And how can we learn from it? And I really like what some of the attendees are talking about. Especially there was one comment around how maybe it's a methodology, that we're looking at. How do we, based on what Kanika also, where you were talking about that there's a lot of different contexts, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different gender issues, and so how do we have maybe a methodology that there is a number of different solutions that young people need, and then really start to replicate that at scale, if at all possible. And I think it's a number of different things. You're talking about labor markets. You're talking about investment into the rural context. You can't keep training and working with young people if there's no economic development. And SMEs can't sell into anywhere if, again, there's no economic activity that's happening in these rural locations. And so there has to be that kind of mapping, as you're saying, Karuna, to really have those businesses, the activity that they're working on. And it's happened with Pune. There's secondary cities that are coming up. And so how do we think about it from a district level in the rural space, or clusters of districts, as we look at different value chains and opportunities that they can map into? I definitely want to then end on two questions. And if our attendees have noticed, I'm picking up all of your questions real time rather than having a Q&A at the end. Have been incorporating them into the questions I'm asking my panelists. And there's two areas that I'd really love to understand. And then we'll go around quickly for everyone's parting shot. My last question to everybody will be, what are you most excited about, in terms of at scale, what could really make this difference? And is it this program design, methodology, et cetera? So I'm going to come back to everyone for 30 seconds to a minute at the end. But before that, I have two questions. One is, and maybe we can start with Vinay, is how do you drive economic activity into the rural space? Because again, you're looking at SMEs, a lot of them are micro. How do you think about that in the rural context and really driving the value chains and factors of production? And then the second one I'll ask is, Aliva and Kanika especially, do you feel that, and this is some of the questions that have come up, do youth need more guidance? How do you think about, should you go for this type of career versus an entrepreneurial career? What does your career trajectory look like? And how can we really work on that youth mindset throughout that whole process, as Karuna has been mentioning? So first, over to you, Vinay, if you can tell us about how you think SMEs can flourish, especially in the rural space, especially micro entrepreneurs. They need markets. How do you drive investment in the value chains in the rural context?
Yeah. So I think the fundamental challenge for a lot of micro entrepreneurs has been the market linkage, right? So both forward as well as backward. To a large extent, we've seen that the backward linkages are again very relationship based. So if I know somebody, I'm in a small town near Lucknow, and I know there is a relative of mine in Lucknow who has access to the cloth bazaar. I then just call him or her up and say, okay, can I get some of the raw material brought here, and then I can do some value addition and sell it in my area, right? So I think that's typically, it's a very kinship-based network that people will resort to. And that's also a function of, like I said, not knowing what the opportunities are, right? I mean, can I get my raw materials at a better price? Can I get labor at a better price? Can I have more quality inputs coming in? I think access to that is currently missing. There are multiple platforms trying to build that. We've recently been in conversations with an organization called Frontier Markets, which has been creating rural women entrepreneurs who their entrepreneurship is all about making those connections happen. So if somebody needs certain raw material, let's say somebody needs fertilizer raw material, so a woman farmer can reach out to them on the app and they get access to that. If somebody needs access to finance, right? Then there are, for the longest time you had the entire rural banking correspondent network, right? A large proportion of them continue to be women. I think the forward linkages are more difficult in our experience. A lot of times we've seen MSMEs making products, large section, which are not monetized. Very often there are people from the neighborhood. This is particularly true in the rural context, that it could be a friend, a relative, could be a neighbor who knows that you make this really nice design for a blouse, for example. And then they just come and ask you out of courtesy, and you also out of courtesy can't say no, right? We've seen a lot of cases where, and even if at times when you are pricing and selling your products, they're at a grossly underpriced the same rug sold in a large urban center would fetch you much more. So, and there are a lot of platforms that have again come, but I think the challenge is just, in our experience, when MSMEs, especially rural India, we've seen have struggled to get access to those markets. And sometimes it's a question of smartphones, sometimes it's not. But I think just being aware of these markets is really what we're trying to fix through some partnerships. Yeah.
That's very helpful, Vinay, and I think that's a bigger question as well. So maybe in the last minute or two here, Aliva, just kind of your last kind of shot combined with guidance for youth. Same with Kanika as well. And we might have to end it with that. So Aliva and then Kanika, please go ahead.
Yeah. So, so Alice, I mean, the key takeaway or the key learning insight that we have been having is, creating an enabling ecosystem for the rural youth. So if you are able to, catalyze that ecosystem for the youth, they will be able to take on their, make their own choices and take on with whatever decisions that they make for their lives. So for me, it is very important that we work to create that ecosystem, which will enable them to make or take a choice regarding their life. So this is, the key takeaways that, or the key reflections that I have been having through my engagements with the rural youth in few communities in India. Great. Guidance and choice. Kanika, from your perspective.
Yeah, I hope my network stays while I finish, but let's hope so. I think Vinay sort of talked about it, Karna talked about it, that the context is that 90% of the employment is happening in the informal space, right? And most of it is subsistence driven. So I think what Aliva just said, basically, having access to choice, to understand opportunity is extremely important. And are we creating that brave space for young people to be able to do that? Not from us becoming, being a guide or a mentor, but from each other is extremely important. How do you create much stronger peer-to-peer kind of a network? And I'm not a very big fan of training because it's sort of actually, it goes against the spirit of becoming entrepreneurial. So I think the entrepreneurs have access to a lot of, we've seen it with our eyes. They're able to run not one, but serial businesses now that have been standing. And we have seen 93% of the businesses set up standing just because of the resilience and access to understanding that they have opportunity. Even something like gig, last thoughts on that, because I saw a lot of points and questions on that. I think, again, we might want to sort of think about our aptitude, our sort of thinking of gig itself. Do we really place it in the skilling space, or do we put it in the space of being entrepreneurial? Because that's what it is. It does take a little bit of risk to be in the space. So if we were to sort of shift that a little bit, our own attitude, perhaps we might be able to find a solution. And to sort of end this in a more positive note, a lot of conversation around future of work, right, has to end in young people saying, we can give you the answer by being entrepreneurial. The future can be bright. We've done some calculations and we figured out that if even 5 enterprises are created 8 districts in India with just 3 jobs, you will be able to solve the employment issues. So here's a little bit of optimism for us.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And overall, there is a lot of challenges, but also incredible optimism and interventions that all of our panelists are investing in their time and energy. And I think this is an incredible end to this session. Thank you so much to all of you for the fantastic insights, all of our attendees, brilliant questions. I think I'd love to summarize them all and send them back to everyone who's attended this great event. And so I do want to end on how all of you have touched on program design and how critical it is to involve young people throughout in a very genuine way that really takes a much more holistic approach while bringing together some of the more innovative interventions that we're seeing across all of our panelists' work. So once again, really appreciate the time, the effort, and hope we can continue to all work together going forward and share our lessons for the rest of the country. Thank you so much.
Alice, thank you for being a fantastic moderator. You deserve all the thanks as well. Asking the correct questions and the leading questions. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Karuna. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Have a great rest of your evening. Take care.
You too. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Neeraj.
Thanks, Neeraj. Thanks.